Hey guys, Tom Barclay here. I just thought I'd do a video on Antonin Kinsky, Tottenham's new goalkeeper, seeing as I've sort of found out a bit more about him, watched a lot of videos and read a lot of stuff. Thought I'd neatly put it all into one video on the back of him signing. And the best place to start it off with is the fact that he's actually got his work permit now as of this afternoon. Earlier today, this is Monday, doing this video, it seemed a bit in doubt whether he'd actually get it through in time because he hadn't had it still, and it takes about 48 hours for it to come through. But he has now received it, which means that the Carabao Cup semi-final, first leg against Liverpool on Wednesday, he could possibly could play. He'd be available for selection. Depends whether Ange wants to throw him straight in after such a sort of whirlwind transfer, or whether he sticks with either Brandon Austin, who only got his first appearance for the club in nearly 10 years at it, against Newcastle, or if Fraser Forster recovers in time. But whatever happens, obviously Kinsky is the long-term solution, brought in not just as cover for Guillermo Vicario, who's obviously out injured at the moment with a fractured ankle, but also he's been signed to challenge him as well, and I'll come on to that in a little bit. So good news regarding Kinsky and whether he is available for selection. So could see him in action already in what would be an absolutely massive first game if he does play. So Kinsky, talked a little bit about him in the post-match video for Newcastle, because he obviously signed just before then, or the news was going through that he was going to sign. And so I'll just go into a bit more detail. So his vital statistics is he's 21. He signed for 12.5 million plus add-ons, and there seems to be a little sell-on clause there as well. He signed a 6.5-year deal, which I believe takes him to 2031. So it's one of these long-term deals that we see is quite common in modern-day football. Obviously, Chelsea setting the bar there, but Tottenham also committing players to long-term contracts there. He's a Czech rising star, played 4 times, I believe, for the Czech under-21 side, but really highly rated over there as a probably future senior international, you'd expect. Joins from Slavia Prague, where he'd helped them get to the top of the league in what was his first season, playing regularly in the first team. This year they are top of the league, 7 points clear from 19 games, which they've only lost 1 game. He's kept 12 clean sheets during that time. He's also been very good in the Europa League, which Slavia Prague are in as well, as are, of course, Tottenham. But because of a rule change, he will be able to play for Spurs in the Europa League, which is obviously something I presume Spurs considered, particularly when making this transfer happen, which they had accelerated from the summer. That was the plan, at least, to bring in a new goalkeeper in the summer rather than right now. Fraser Forster's contract obviously is up in the summer, and I imagine he would move on. But because of his contractual status for the whole of the season, and Vicario being generally an ever-present and not having too many injury issues, the plan had been in the summer to do this. But obviously Vicario sustaining that fractured ankle in that amazing 4-0 win at Man City back in November has changed things. His timeline at the moment is not to be back until the end of February, is what the last Ange Postecoglou spoke on that. Although we did see on Sunday, I believe, Vicario posting a video on Instagram of him being out of his protective boots. So hopefully that means the recovery is going well. And I think it sort of speaks to how this has been accelerated, and it wasn't the initial plan to have him join now, by the fact that Kinsky himself wasn't expecting to move this quickly. In fact, in this window, he thought he was staying at Slavia Prague. He's given an interview to Slavia Prague, their official website, in which he said he wasn't expecting to go this month, and he was so certain he was staying that he'd actually arranged with his glove sponsor to have some new gloves delivered on Sunday or Monday. So today being Monday, so yesterday or today. And on Friday, after training, he didn't expect anything was going to happen. He went and had a sauna with some friends, and had a massage, turned his phone off during this period, obviously. And then when he turned it back on, it was all kicking off. The transfer was happening. And he realised that he didn't have any boots or gloves when he was heading over. I'm not quite sure why he needed them, because I presume he gets a lot of gear from Tottenham, but this is what he was saying anyway. And he actually ended up driving, because he didn't have anything at home. He ended up driving into Pilsen and a place called Eden, which is Eden is a part of Prague, where the stadium for Slavia Prague is based, in search of buying some new ones. So he did manage to get hold of some, and obviously came over. So that kind of speaks to the sort of frantic nature of this particular transfer, in which even the player himself was not expecting it to happen. But obviously things change. Spurs have made their move, one of hopefully a few moves in this window, which it looks like there could be others on their way. Obviously they're looking at players in positions, players in various positions, whether it be an attacker or a defender in particular. Lots of hopefully things to come, but that'll be one for another video. We're sticking with Kinsky right here on this particular one. So he's known as Tony. There was some good little introductory videos he's done to Tottenham's website. Obviously, since signing, we always see those interviews that he does. So some of this information would have been gleaned from there, but other places I found various bits of information. So Tony is his name, is generally what he goes by. And as I said, he is understood to be there to challenge Vicario rather than just be a backup. And you'd think he'd get a lot of game time, whether it starts with Liverpool or not, we're not sure at this stage, but you'd likely think that he would come in pretty quickly. And with the amount of games that he'll have by the time Vicario is back fully fit, he could well have impressed so much that he could now make it his own. Vicario won't be happy with that, of course, being the character that he is and the leader that he is in the dressing room. But I think it's fair to say that Vicario's performances, whilst solid at times, he was excellent at City where he got injured. Amazing the fact that he carried on under those circumstances. But there have been moments, particularly, it's obvious from set pieces, he's been vulnerable. So it does feel like there's an opportunity there for Kinsky if he can go and impress. He's apparently a very confident individual, so says his former coach, of which quotes I'll come on to in a second. Not cocky was the quote, but very, very self-confident, which is what you need to be, particularly as a goalkeeper, I imagine, when you're facing strikers kicking the ball in the Premier League now at such a young age, at such a fearsome force. But he's apparently very confident. It sounds like he's ambidextrous, at least with his feet. And actually, I might as well come on to those quotes from his former coach. So I was sent these quotes from a guy called Rostislav Horacek, if I pronounce that right. He's a 57-year-old, the goalkeeping coach that Kinsky had during a very formative loan spell across 2 seasons at a relatively small town club called Vyskov, which are in the second tier in Czech Republic, or at least they were when he was playing. And he ended up playing sort of 43 games or so when he was 18, 19 for them, and that went a long way. And Horacek, if I pronounce that right, was saying that basically he even asked during one training session which foot he preferred, because I guess he'd noticed that he was playing so well off both feet, and Kinsky said it didn't matter. He's equally good off both feet. So that's one to look out for, his ability off both feet, which will be very, very useful, obviously, from the team's point of view, and playing out from the back. I mean, we know it's been a big talking point during Vicario's absence, how ill-equipped, let's be honest, Fraser Forster has been to trying to play Postecoglou's style of play. Many fans would argue that Postecoglou should have adapted during this period of play when he hasn't got the tools at his disposal to do what he wanted to do, but he hasn't. Doesn't really matter what you really think about that. The key point is that Postecoglou is not going to change. He's proven that during the most, I guess, when he's not doing it during like the most adverse situations with all these injuries, and he still continues to play that way. That shows that he is clearly wedded to it. But the good thing is Kinsky feels like he really fits that mould. He's someone that was identified by technical director Johan Lang, along with Rob McKenzie, his number 2, and clearly fits into the way of kind of goalkeeper that Ange wants. And I think there's a stat here that kind of speaks to it really, his ability with his feet. That in the Europa League this season, he's got a success passing rate of 83.9%, which is better than any other goalkeeper in the Europa League who've played 5 games or more. And that sort of speaks volumes, as does he himself when he's talked about how much he enjoys playing with his feet. So look out for that when he's playing. A lot of good passes from the back. I feel like ever since Forster's come into the team, he's actually made a lot of good saves, albeit I've conceded a lot of goals. I don't know if that's really Forster's fault. That's more the team. But every time he has the ball at the back, I've been having kittens as a neutral, let alone fans out there. I thought Austin actually did quite well at the weekend, to be fair to him on that front. But a player who can come in and it be his natural game to receive the ball in difficult situations and play sort of key passes could be transformational, to be honest, for the way Ange wants to play. And I suppose on that point, it's not surprising that he used to be an outfield player. I mean, a lot of goalkeepers were, but apparently that's what Kinsky used to be. Sort of sums up his ability with his feet. And he went in goal because he wanted to follow in the footsteps of his dad and even surpass him. His dad, who's by the same name, Antonin Kinsky. In fact, if you Google Antonin Kinsky, as a lot of people are probably at the moment, the first Wikipedia page I imagine that you'll come up for is actually his old man, who's 49. Antonin Kinsky Sr., I suppose now, had a very good career himself, largely spent in the Czech Republic, but also had a lot of games out in Russia, and crucially 5 games for the Czech Republic national team. So he's a player that he's an individual who had a very impressive playing career himself, and has had a huge influence on his son. As you'd expect, his son, I think when he was speaking to Spurs, talks about him being a role model and still a big influence on him in every decision he makes. And it was his dad who very much pushed for him to make the decision to make this move to Tottenham. As from those Spurs videos, a few little sort of fun little insights into Antonin Jr.'s character. He's clearly a big basketball fan because Kobe Bryant is another role model of his. In fact, he's got an image of Kobe Bryant on his screensaver on his phone. The late, great Kobe Bryant, of course, like legendary basketball player. He also talks about how much his love of Czech rap from a music point of view. I guess these things aren't, it's not crucial to knowing about how he's going to play, but it gives you a bit of an insight into the kind of character he is. As is the fact that when he was asked a classic question that I often ask, what would you do if you weren't a footballer? He couldn't even think of anything. He basically said effectively a professional football fan, which is obviously not a thing, but sums up how much he's obsessed with the game. And he isn't one of those individuals who had something else in mind. He's always been football. Just back to Horacek, this old coach, some of the comments he made. He said that when he first he started working with Kinsky, he said there were guys down the pub who laughed at him, as in laughed at Horacek, when he said he had an 18-year-old boy in the second league who he thought could play for the national team, but he said he was convinced of it. And there's a lovely other quote I got. These quotes sent by a website called Flash Score. Who said that he said that he looked forward. This is Kinsky. Looked forward to tough matches like a little kid looks forward to ice cream. So hopefully, if that kind of attitude continues, it speaks to his confidence that he's effectively a big game player, or has been at least in the Czech lower leagues and in the Czech first division. It's obviously a massively different step in the Premier League. So we'll see how that one goes. But it does sound like he's someone who's not overawed by occasions. At least he hasn't been in his career so far. Obviously, different kettle of fish when it comes to the Premier League. So we'll see. And then came a sort of comparison to a Czech legend that we all know of, Peter Czech, who's about as a bigger name as it comes from Czech players. One of the biggest names in Premier League history, arguably the greatest goalkeeper in the history of the competition. I'd probably just give it to Schmeichel, but it's close. And Czech's numbers probably even better. Amazing amount of clean sheets, 124 caps, I think, for the Czech Republic. Was a wonderful player for Chelsea. And the comparison that Horacek made to Peter Cech, when he was talking about Tonda, which was the nickname he gave Kinsky throughout this interview rather than Tony, he said that like Cech, who when he was playing for Chelsea and had that amazing defence in front of him led by John Terry, in games, he'd often have 40 minutes would go by with the keeper literally having nothing to do, but the focus would remain there to be able to make those one or two crucial saves. And he said that Antonin was very strong on this as well. That's the comparison to Cech, that he could see that sort of focus and ability to pull off saves when needed. I suppose personally, watching Ange Postecoglou's football at Tottenham, whether you like it or not, whatever you think about it, it's unlikely he's going to have to go big periods of the game without having to make saves, just because they play such open football, which is pretty thrilling for the neutral, but at times must be very frustrating for fans. So I don't think he's going to really need those situations where he's doing nothing in a game for ages and still having to keep his concentration up, but it's good to hear that he's got that in his locker. And Yeah, that sort of pretty much sums it up. The one final point actually that Horacek made when he was asked about, and this was from an interview I think back in October perhaps. So this was before Spurs came on the scene, but has been sort of brought to my attention since this move came about. And the quotes are still very relevant and valid to understanding this. Let's be honest, a player that most of us, including myself, I wasn't aware of before all this happened. He said that the only problem he could think of in his game is Kinsky loves being on the ball and being involved so much that if time passes when he doesn't get to be involved, he gets frustrated, which kind of goes against what I just said about making the saves. I suppose the point is that he could still make the saves when needed to, but the point that Horacek was making was then he'll try and impose himself when it comes to getting on the ball and playing perhaps relatively risky passes to sort of show off his ability with the ball at his feet. Now, Ange will probably love that in terms of the ability to make passes from his goalkeeper. I think that means that Spurs fans maybe should brace themselves a little bit for some hairy moments, but from what it sounds like with his ability off both feet, as I said, with Kinsky, it looks like he'd back himself to get himself out of difficult situations and hopefully spark those attacks, which in Postecoglou's mind are absolutely essential. It's a funny one, isn't it, in modern football, that there's such a disconnect, it seems, between your average football fan, and you might get someone who's really, really sort of tactically aware, and the modern day manager when it comes to playing out from the back. In fact, I can't think of many things that are sort of as different in terms of opinion as that topic, because you'll get your average fan, and I know it's embedded in our English football culture because a lot of us, depending on your age, have grown up with not Route 1 football, but a lot more direct than we're seeing these days. But under certain circumstances, you get very, very scared when seeing a team knock it about at the back. And look, people have had their issues have cropped up. I mean, literally Fraser Forster against Man United almost threw away the game from overplaying at the back on 2 separate occasions. But managers, and it's not just Postecoglou, it's Graham Potter, it's so many managers that I've come across, in fact more than not in recent years, that are completely puritanical, I guess is the word. They won't change their opinion. They think it is a key factor into transition, that word, that another footballing term, in terms of being able to turn over the ball once you've won it and go on the attack and beat the press, another phrase, famous sort of loved phrase of modern day football, get through the opposition and spark attacks. And I guess it's one of those ones where it's quite hard to sort of quantify how often it is successful versus the risk factor of overplaying at the back, but that's the way they like to play. It's definitely the way Postecoglou likes to play, and if you're going to play that way, you need the right kind of individual who can pull it off. And I'm not convinced, as most people are, that Forster was that guy. But it sounds like Kinsky, that is right up his street. So we'll wait to see how he gets on. It's obviously a much bigger level. We've got a similar situation, I suppose, as Bergvall, although the Czech league is probably stronger than the Swedish league, but a player coming into, well, definitely is, but we've got a player coming into the biggest league in the world and how he's going to perform. But I'm excited to see how he gets on. And if he can get thrown in against Liverpool, we'll find out on Tuesday's press conference if it's a possibility of that happening. Well, I know it's a possibility of happening. Whether Ange really is thinking of doing it or not, if he gives anything away, then that could be a really sort of thrilling subplot going into this, another crucial game. Anyway, that's pretty much it on Antonin Kinsky. I'll speak to you after the press conference on Tuesday. Cheers, guys.